Good day, ladies and gentlemen. I'll get straight to the point. At the moment, the so-called de facto governments, as well as the governments, the centralization, as well as the Federal Reserve, hold you in what is known as the powers of attorney. That powers of attorney allows anybody that is holding that power of attorney to conduct your affairs in all matters. What does that mean? When you signed up for a credit card or a mortgage, or when you signed up to anything with Washington, D.C., or with the Bank of England, or with your governments, they are not really your governments, I withdraw that, with the so-called de facto governments. With it accompanied what is known as a power of attorney. That general power of attorney gives them sweeping powers. This means that they can decide what food you eat, what type of education you get, when you live, when you die, what organs can be removed from your body, whether you're alive or dead, what type of education you receive, and what type of news you receive, and what type of monies you get to spend. The list would be so extensive, it would be 100 representation of the situation that the Canadians, the Americans, the English, the Europeans, the Africans, the Indians, and the rest of them find themselves in. So I will now tell you, as you know, if you reverse that all powers of attorney, that power of attorney, with the people that hold it, in fact, it is the Federal Reserve Bank in each country in the world that holds that power of attorney, that conduct your affairs in the private as well as in the public. If you reverse that, the police, the army, the navy will now be in a position to safeguard you, the people. The reason why you are having so much trouble with the police and the navy, and why they feel that they have the right to do anything that they want with you, is because they are the custodians, the trustees of that note that you signed unawares. In doing so, and I'm repeating myself, they get to choose whether you have gold, silver, copper, or fiat currency. You have now come to understand what fiat currency means. It means empty promissory notes, full stop. I will now be speaking to you about what is known as the zeroing of the dollar. Another word for that is modern money mechanics. Modern money mechanics, which is a publication from the Federal Reserve Bank as to what their intention is in regarding the fiat currency. From the day it was created to this day, its plan was to always cannibalize on the existing notes in circulation in your pockets to as close as zero as they possibly can. In doing so, they have removed your entire sweat equity, your savings, your bank account, your houses, and everything that is within the realm of that all powers of attorney or powers of attorney to put you and lock you into a perpetual state of servitude, where the very air, and this is not an exaggeration, where the very air that you breathe will also be taxable. Okay, taxable. I'm aware of the entire mechanisms of how that works and what the bureaucracy is, and I also have the knowledge to be able to break it. I will give you another mechanics of how this is done. When you signed up to open up a bank account, a security was issued on your behalf. They took that security and took custody of it. And in return, they put it into the hands of another trustee calling parliaments, okay, Lord Spiritual and Temporal. They, in turn, on your behalf, handed it over to a private organization calling itself, quite literally a private organization that issues all your dollars as a Federal Reserve note, and they took it up from the government of what is known and worded as a bond. I don't know if I made myself very clear in that last explanation, so I say it again. When you took up a mortgage or a credit card or a bank account, you essentially gave them permission to issue money on your behalf. Okay, and they took that money and they securitized it. In securitizing it through the government agencies, what happened is that the government created what is known as a government bond. These are all your securities that you signed up, all bundled up, and moved from the public into the private hands of what you know as the Federal Reserve Bank all over the world. And the Federal Reserve Bank hold that bond. Another word for that bond is the powers of attorney, which the private men and women that own that Federal Reserve Bank, the private men and women that own that Federal Reserve Bank now conduct your entire affairs. So I will paraphrase this once more before I go on to the other topics. If one of you, my subscribers called James, imaginary, signed a powers of attorney over to me, and it was a general powers of attorney, what would that mean to James? What James is asking, while he is busy doing whatever he's doing, or incapacitated, or mentally incapacitated, or busy, or traveling, or holidaying, whatever it is that he is doing, he is telling me to look after his children if he needs it, and to conduct whatever I need to conduct his affairs with his children. In other words, I will become a loco in parentis. He's also telling me to instruct the physician, the doctor, the nurses, the hospital, the NHS, and the various other organizations in every country, how I should be treated, whether I should be treated badly, whether I should be treated with respect or dignity, or with a great deal of contempt, or simply have me killed, what they call euthanasia. He's also giving me the powers to go into his bank, because I've got the proof that he's done that, and to conduct all of his financial affairs. This includes either to buy houses for him or to sell houses, including his furniture or the house that he exists, as well as his transportation. In other words, he has given me total and utter power to conduct his affairs until he withdraws that power of attorney, full stop. I have that technology. I have the ability to do that because I'm the Chief Federal Postal Court Judge and educating you as the plenipotentiary judge on a planetary scale. Full stop. At this stage, it should become very obvious to men and women that the governments are being protected by the police and the navy and the army and so on and so forth, because they are the custodians of the power of attorney, which means they are duty bound to protect the interests that you entrusted to these de facto corporate governments. This includes solicitors and etc. Full stop. I think you understand the severity, and I think you understand the severity of the situation. And I also want you to know how incredibly vulnerable you are, with this piece of note still floating around that has yet to be squashed. Okay? I have squashed these notes for myself because once upon a time I was unaware of it, but when I became aware of it, I quashed it. And so did my Tricks and Traps University students for themselves. Full stop. Now, I am instructing, asking, pleading to the users of Bitcoin and the Bitcoin educators, as well as the blockchain educators, to please educate in whatever means you want of the evidence that I'm going to show you. This is the publication that I was speaking about called Modern Mechanics, Modern Money Mechanics, where it is, in banking terms, is telling you our end goal for this lease that we have in America, in whichever country they're operating in, is that we will essentially cannibalize on all existing notes that have already been issued, that are in your savings, invested in your houses, invested in your cars, invested into your education, and so on and so forth. We intend to cannibalize it so much that it will zero itself out. In other words, the monies that you have in your wallet and in your savings will have little or no value. We have seen these things happen week on week in so many different countries, but because most people or most human beings are in a state of mental, or if not cognitive, dissonance, they really believe that these things cannot happen to them. Well, it has already happened. Full stop. Your ability to conduct your own affairs is what's being given to you. So it's an offer. You either accept or refuse, and then there will be an exchange of value, which is, in this case, will be your word, okay? And I now begin to perform, and then you go and do your performance, as it were. It's like any other contract. So the exchange of value for this reason can be your word, okay, which I will take from you and which I will hold you to. Full stop. What I'm asking is that all the Bitcoiners, that you need to know this, and you need to educate your student base, your client base, you YouTubers out there that are championing Bitcoin, and those people that are championing it so high they got millions of views. Please explain to them what the end result game, what is known as the end game, has been in open public sight for the dollars all around the world. It's not restricted to the Republican dollar. There are other currencies around, euro, and there are other dollars around, like the Singapore dollar. It's not just the US dollar that is subjugating itself to this. Okay, it has always been their plan to zero out your account. I think I've made that clear. Full stop. What the Canadians have experienced, and for them to do what they have done with the Freedom Convoy, with the vaccine mandate, shows the entire planet that the vaccines that the governments have been saying that they've been injecting people with is not as high as they were publicizing. They hire crisis actors to create queues and so on and so forth, to give you the illusion that people are just queuing up day and night to have those vaccines. They are showing you we are not vaccinated. That's what that is. You see, when somebody wishes to stick a needle inside of you and do that by force, you are now dealing with a Nazi pig. That Nazi pig's throat needs to be held tight until you hear no signs of life from it. Have no mistake, these are Nazis. Nazis in principle. Nazis by conduct. By their very affairs, they have exposed to you the vulgarity of what they are. Your tolerance is your consent. Your zero tolerance is you telling them where to go and what to do. And you have to pick up that zero tolerance, that dictatorial nature that you have over something that is so puny that you can stop it with a pen. So that freedom movement, the Freedom Convoy, ladies and gentlemen, is actually gone global. And like the BBC and so many of these fake news that all work for the banks, the Federal Reserve banks, are lying to you, because that's what they do. When somebody gets you to believe a lie, they've actually removed you from the world of fact and into the world of fiction, because you are now believing a lie, and therefore you're living out a lie. And this is happening on a grand scale, as you are witnessing. The entire structure is built upon one lie over another. When you expose one lie, the government has to spend trillions of dollars trying to cover up that one lie. That is why the Gospels, which is another word for good news, makes it very clear: a lie begets another lie. So that is that with the freedom movement. I will describe to you the nature of the war that is taking place in the Ukraine, as it were. Apart from the political domineering, it's the best way I can put it, by Russia and the United States. United States is essentially a centralized organization. In other words, it's a spider organization, and it is always in a perpetual state of fear that somebody will come along and sever the head of the spider organization. Okay? Hence, the freedom convoys and the people that are doing what they're doing at the moment are called leaderless. Leaderless organizations always overwhelm centralized organization. They will try to get a sweet spot. This is a compromise between centralization and leaderless organization, called starfish organizations. Do not allow them. Do not pick up leaders. You are your own leader. You are your own master. In fact, everybody below the age of 14 that hasn't been sold into the stock market is always being called a master. Did you know that? And a master is uncontaminated and has the ability to conduct their own affairs, as in master in Queen's Bench, a court. It's a court system of the Queen's banking system. Full stop. At the moment, US, not Americans, are trying to unstabilize the free ports that are popping up in their hundreds all over the world. These free ports are tax-free zones where the chieftains, albeit the lords, do not tax you so heavy that it's very difficult for you to import and export. They're called tax-free zones, okay? And Putin has many of them all around the world. And that is what the US is trying to stop. They're trying to stop the free ports that are existing in the Eastern Bloc countries, as it were. Putin is doing his best to make sure the ports that they have there remain free economic zone for this new economy that you have successfully actually been birthed into, called the Corona period, where these ports are available to you. All my students know about it, and they're studying about it, and they're going to make ample amounts of money on the back that they don't have to be destroyed by stealth taxes. You see, the whole world, whether you like it or not, whether the US likes it or the Federal Reserve Bank likes it, or whether the Olympians like it or not, is going decentralized. When you decentralize everything, it goes onto a blockchain system that will make it very public. What does that mean? So that means if Joe Biden, the president, is receiving money, or monies are going out of his accounts, known as the Washington, D.C. banks, everybody can see it. And they're petrified of that's going to reveal. Because it's going to reveal they've been practicing all manner of things which is titled barbarism. And barbarism carries a death penalty by the Navy. They're petrified. So can you imagine the transactions that has been taking place over 99 years in Washington, D.C., in the Bank of England, in the City of London, etc.? Can you imagine an MP making a vote and him selling that vote for the highest bidder is shown on a blockchain. So because a McDonald's corporation or something like that has bought up the votes that is supposed to be you, and he's casting that vote on behalf of a corporation as to opposed to your interest. They're going to get caught out on all of this. And the world is becoming a free economic zone because the blockchain and the Bitcoin allows that mechanism to take place. So I'm asking those so-called business educators out there, do the fundamental rudimentary research that you need to, which will only last like 10 minutes. 10 minutes. Educate people. Okay? Full stop on what this war is about. The war is essentially about securing those free ports. Okay, and I forgot to put it on full screen. I do apologize. Hopefully you fully understood what zeroing of the dollar means, and hopefully I've explained to you what the free ports are and why the war is taking place. It's a war between centralization, as in the matrix, as opposed to the individual units out there called leaderless organizations, because you are actually a walking, talking, autonomous creature, free to contract with anybody on this planet, with no restrictions. The free ports are not controlled ports. You understand what I'm saying? You're free to come and go as you've always been. But through the language and through the manipulation of fear, they have robbed you and got you going through the federal ports where so many of the tight restrictions exist. Yeah, all that's going. You're going to get free ports, free airports, free shipping ports, free imports, free exports. Yeah, and the intention of the creators of the decentralized mechanism is so they can only take like 0.001% of the transaction you do, as to opposed to anything up to 80%. I think you understand where I'm going with this. It's a war between centralization and decentralization. A war between central banking and decentralized finance called DeFi. Full stop. I will come back onto a subject that is so important it should change the entire surface of this planet once it is comprehended. What will stop you from actually grasping it is your own sense of that can't possibly happen. That is called mental dissonance or cognitive dissonance. You wish not to believe it. You wish not to believe that Nazis can do what they do because it's too horrific. Your own mind protects you from the horrors of what man is capable of, or humans are capable of. And this is quite literally, and I've titled it as the Coroner's Journal. The Coroner's Journal has listed you as dead. What does that mean? Another word for the coroner is coronation. Another word for coronation is corona. Another word for corona is coroner. Another English word for all these words is called the crown. The coroner's court has you listed as the dead, and as a result, the Crown Corporation is conducting your affairs. They're basically saying that you are dead verbally and that you are dead in mind, what they call brain dead, dead on paper, dead on contract, and to prove that you have a death pledge called a mortgage. I have the ability to reverse all of that with the County Coroner's Court. The County Coroner's Court is the only court on this planet that concerns you at the moment. All other courts, by their own listing, including Supreme Courts, with the exception of the military courts as well as the federal postal courts, which is, what we operate out of from, what we operate from and out of, are all puny judges and puny courts. They're puny clerks, they're puny courts, and they're puny administrative systems operating in the dead. Okay? I have the ability to reverse that. It is the county coroner that needs to know that you are living, and that you're not brain dead, and that you have the ability to make contract on paper, and that you're free and always have been free. Full stop. It is quite an horrific moment to think what the consequences are when you are dead on paper. I will now explain to you. You have seen 101 movies where it's in, say, World War II, and the Nazi comes up to you, the SS uniformed officer, which is a legal fiction, and he asks for your papers in the most polite manner you can possibly imagine. He asks you. And when he looks at the paper, he salutes you and says, "Thank you very much. That's all, sir." And you're on your way. By just looking at that piece of paper. What's that about? Second scenario. The same officer asks another man or a woman for their papers. He or she hands that paper over to them, and he looks at it, and he simply says, "How is the work going on in the factory?" They will say, "It's going very well. We're doing very well, thank you." And the officer will say, "Thank you very much for your service." And he'll give them the papers back, and they'll walk away. By just looking at that piece of paper, like a passport, like a vaccine mandate passport, he's able to distinguish what it is that they're doing. Third and last final scenario. He asks for another woman, a woman on the street, to see her papers. He looks at the papers, and he simply clicks his finger, calls the van over, and tells them, take her and put her in the concentration camp for experimentation of chemicals and weapons and so on and so forth. And that he's doing that all on the back of a piece of paper that he's looking at. What he's looking at is how their names are written. And every style of writing of their name designates what they are and what they are doing and what's going to be happening to them. In other words, he knows whether they're working in a factory, whether they are concentration camp material for experimentation, whether they should be killed or murdered, or whether they should go to the war front, or they should be saluted and thank them for the service. That is all done on the back of him looking at that piece of paper. And it is, oddly enough, in front of your face and everybody else's face, but you don't know it. So look up your passport, your driving license, and the various bills that come through your letterbox, and the various ways of spelling your name, because they always spell your name very so different from what your birth name is. In doing so, each one is a designation of what is happening to you. If your vaccine passport is written in a particular way, you're earmarked for death. If your vaccine passport is written in a particular way, your name, it's earmarked for longevity. I think I have described to you, by you just simply looking at the various letters that come through your letterbox, including passport, driving license, bank accounts, you will see what I am saying is 100% correct. And on the back of this, ladies and gentlemen, I wish the world the best it can, and the horrors of what man can do or humans can do to you has always been told to you. There is only so much of mental cognitive dissonance that you can experience before, and pardon the expression, before that sword comes swinging to your head. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I wish you all the best.